everyone, Marilynn Hughes from the Out of Body Travel Foundation. Today I'm joined by Samuel Chong, very interesting person who is the Chinese translator of Abduction to the Ninth Planet, which is currently now called Thaioouba Prophecy, but this is the former version of the book, which was put out by Michel Desmarquet many years ago, who is now deceased. And Samuel has a very interesting story of how he met with the author, and then he became the Chinese translator of the book and is now going around and sharing the information from Michel's experiences with many people. And so I'm going to hand it right over to you, Samuel. Tell us about this.
Yes, I met the author twice, wanting to find out what else he knew but didn't write in the book, because the book, to me, it was very, very fascinating, answering all the questions I had in mind about the mysteries and paranormals of the world, like who built the Great Pyramid of Egypt, what happens in the Bermuda Triangle, so many planes and ships disappear, just vanish, and what's really the Bible was talking about, especially when I was, I grew up from China. I didn't have any experiences with the religions at all. But after I came to the US, I went to the church just for social reasons to develop my business network. I didn't believe anything in the Bible. And then I just wanted to find out why so many people believed in Christ. And to me, there were a lot of inconsistencies in the Bible, but the teachings are really, really amazing and good. I wanted to know more about it. So this book really amazed me at connecting all the dots together, like consistently with specific verifiable facts. For example, it talks about little known facts like the antibacterial effects of yellow light and blue light, because the author, having his unique experience of being taken by the ETs to their planet and then came back after 9 days, he was disinfected using yellow light and blue light. And it turns out the Harvard Medical School had a paper on the antibacterial, antiviral effects of yellow light and blue light. So this just little things that amaze me a lot, and including later in the book, it talks about what really happened according to the ET's perspectives of the historical events that happened as recorded by ancient scriptures, including the Bible. So those things really amaze me, including the fact that there is a tomb of Jesus in Japan, in Shingo Village, Japan, that very few people knew about. Remember, the book was written in the early 90s. The event happened in 1987, and the author was a landscaper in Australia. He was a French Australian, and he didn't have a lot of education at all. He never traveled to Japan. How could he have ever known about the tomb of Jesus in Japan? So a lot of things just didn't add up if it weren't for real. So this book really kind of amazed me so much that I wanted to find out what happened to him really, and what else he knew but didn't write in the book. So that's why I tracked him down, and then I took the chance to visit him in Vietnam, because I didn't know his exact address. I just showed a picture of his bungalow in which a tourist posted on the internet to the local taxi driver, and then the taxi driver looked at the photo and said, "Oh, I'll give it a try," and then he took me there. So this is how I met him, and then he asked me to kind of follow up with a Chinese publisher who said that they were going to publish the book in China, but it turned out that they didn't, and then he wanted me to find out find a different publisher to get it published. And this is how I began to retranslate the book into Chinese, and then got it published in China. And then it turned out to be a bestseller in both China and Taiwan, which is really rare because the two countries have different ideologies, very different places.
That's true. Yeah. So just to give people an idea, one of the interesting things about his journey is that it was both physical and out of body. Can you explain that for our viewers so that they understand how he took his journey?
Yes, the physical journey took place in 1987 in Australia. in which he woke up suddenly in the middle of the night. He didn't know why, but he wrote a note to his wife saying that he will be gone for 10 days and there would be no need to worry about him. And then he walked outside of his house to his kind of like a backyard place. And then he felt he was lifted up to the middle of the air, and then everything suddenly changed. The environment changed. It turned out that he was taken to a parallel universe. And then from there, he was explained what happens in the Bermuda Triangle, in which it's actually a portal to a parallel universe, in which a nearby planes and ships and people got stuck into that place where time stops. And the ETs use that as a hiding place, as a transfer station for him to get on the spacecraft so that people nearby, like the neighbors, wouldn't be able to see the entire process.
So how is he taken from his home to that Bermuda Triangle?
The portal, he was lifted up using like a force field because they had the knowledge, they had the abilities to do so. So they just kind of lifted him using a force field to the parallel universe. And then he was taken to the spacecraft and it went through all the anti disinfection process using yellow light, blue light, and then the final step of the disinfection process is to take his astral body out of his physical body so that they could disinfecting his physical body. And then they did that in order to take full advantage of the time, so that his astral body would be able to observe everything happened in the spacecraft. And then after a few hours, his astral body goes back to his physical body, and he would be able to do everything that a normal person would be able to do. So this is the physical travel and the first astral travel that they did on him in order to show him the existence of astral travel, out-of-body experience, and also telepathy. They also communicated with him using telepathy. And they also performed like I think two other astral travels for him. One time it was to take him back in time about 14,500 years ago. They took his astral body to what they would call the psychosphere. And then he would be able to observe everything happened when the continent of Lemuria sunk into the ocean, and how they were trying to survive the natural catastrophe. This is the second time. The third time was that they took his astral body to his past lives so that he would be able to see who he was in the previous lives. So it's a validation of reincarnation, which was explained later in the book. This is actually one of the reasons Christ died on the cross and then resurrected 3 days after, just to show people that there is life after death and there is reincarnation. And then it kind of goes into a lot of other subjects, like what's really the meaning of life is to grow people's spirituality. And we live in this world just to develop our spirituality. And this is actually what Christ taught us. And this is so important because when we read the Bible, the most important sentence in the Bible, in my mind, is the kingdom of God is within you, because we are part of God and God is part of us. So we can communicate to God directly. So that's my take on that.
Okay, and then so that's very interesting. And one of the things that I wanted to ask, which you kind of touched on, but you wrote it really well and succinctly in an email when I asked you to kind of give me the essence of the prophecies, the most important points. And I know that man exists physically for the sole purpose of developing spiritually. And then you mentioned some other things. Would you mind touching on those?
Yes. So the reason for us to come to this world is actually to experience, because when God created the entire universe, it inserted a tiny portion of itself to each one of us. God itself is a pure spirit. So in order to experience the happiness, the sorrows, and also the pains and sufferings, the all the feelings that we have in this world, it has to experience itself through a physical body. So we constantly send feedback to God through our experiences. And God only takes positive experiences like the compassion, love, understanding, and helping others, loving your enemies. And this is the things that God would take back. So this is why it's so important that we need to really take everything as a whole, that we are this, everything is connected, and our brothers and sisters are actually part of us because we are part of God. So we need to really be knowledgeable about the existence of God and everyone else. So this is what the book talks about. This is what the Bible is really about, is to be compassionate, be loving to each other. And when we die, our astral body leaves the physical body, and people would report back, the people who have near-death experiences or out-of-body experiences, they would report back to say that when that happens, everything will be shown to you in terms of what happened in your past life, in your previous life. You'll be able to feel what others felt when you did certain things unto them. You'll be the judge of yourself. No one else is going to judge you. You're going to feel, for example, if I hit a person, I would be able to feel the pains and sufferings of that person. So it's kind of like a holographic film in which you are able to see, hear, feel, and experience everything and everyone surrounding you. And then you'll be able to know what you did correctly and what you did not so well, and so you need to improve in your next life when you reincarnate again. So this is kind of like what happens after a person dies. And then after a certain period of time, there's going to be another choice that you would make, whether to reincarnate into another family, and you'll be able to see like what's going to happen in your next journey, and then you would be able to decide whether to take that experience or not. If you decide to, then your astral body is going to go into the embryo of the family that you chose, and then during that, because the astral body has to go through what the ancient Nagas call the river of oblivion, most people would forget everything that happened in the astral world, what the person saw or was shown to, and then little babies will be born, and the life continues this way.
Right. I know that you also mentioned like technology should assist in spiritual development and not be used to confine and enslave people within a monetary system and the materialistic world, which are both temporary, and that we should follow nature as closely as possible in order to achieve the ultimate goal by the fastest path. That others may from time to time lend you a hand, but they cannot save you from disasters or mistakes automatically. In other words, God helps those who help themselves, and that universal law is well established, and that, there's a law of cause and effect, right?
Yes.
You had mentioned those things as well. And so you had said, according to the Thaiobans, and is that correct? How Thaiubians or Thaiobans?
The actual pronunciation is Jehovah's.
How? Jehovahans.
Jehovah's.
Oh,
Jehovah's.
yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, for obvious reasons. And
Yes.
that man exists physically for the sole purpose of developing spiritually, which I think is very interesting. And then you had all kinds of interesting thoughts on your website that you directed me to look at. So let's go back to some of the things you mentioned. So you mentioned the tomb of Jesus in Shingo Village in Japan. And so I'll just say that, there's a lot in this prophecy that I totally agree with, but there's some things that I have some questions about that I might disagree with a little bit. So we might have a little bit of discussion about a few of those. So you mentioned that the tomb of Jesus in Japan explains why some people say Jesus went to India and why Jesus was not able to perform miracles before the age of 30. And I guess I had a couple of thoughts and a question about that. First of all, just one thought is that there's also another tomb in India, and that one is the Rosa Bal Shrine in Srinagar, Kashmir. And then there are other locations you've probably heard. Some have been considered in Africa. There's tombs of the Blessed Mother considered in, ironically, in actually Britain, Glastonbury. But so how would that, considering that the tombs were, from what I understood, and I read the story of the Shingo village thing, that these were both considered that Jesus went after the crucifixion, or in the Shingo village story, very similar to the Rosa Bal Shrine in Srinagar, except that in Shingo, they're saying that his brother took his place on the cross, but yet the cross still occurred, and so that he went to Japan. And so how would that explain why he wasn't able to do miracles until the age of 30? And I guess, just to be fair, I'm gonna question that premise, which is that he wasn't able to do miracles until the age of 30, just because ancient sacred texts might contradict that idea. And so, just to give you a heads up on that. But so how would that explain that?
So when I look at a lot of different perspectives, I tend to specifically look at the details,
Okay.
like how specific the descriptions are. For example, this book has very, very detailed and specific descriptions of what happened. For example, it explains that the Jesus who was born out of Virgin Mary was actually born from, according to the ETs, born from the embryo implanted by them, just to show people that someone extraordinary was going to be born that way. Virgin Mary was indeed a virgin, and then everything described in the Bible mostly were really accurate according to them. And then because when the person goes into the embryo, the person forgets all the knowledge that he or she accumulated in previous lives. So this is why the young Jesus, even though he was highly spiritual, having a very profound, in-depth discussion with the teachers of the temple, he couldn't perform miracles. This is according to the ETs from Thaioouba. And then he traveled to India and traveled to China and went to Japan and died there with 3 daughters. And then he actually went with his brother who died in China. And then in the tomb of Japan, Shingo Village, Japan, there's a tomb next to it in which buried a lock of hair of his brother. If people nowadays want to verify the specific descriptions in the book, they can just open the tomb next to it and then to see if there's a lock of hair which supposedly to be the hair of Jesus' brother, the Jesus who couldn't perform miracles. And the Japanese people want to connect all the dots by explaining that something like he went back to Jerusalem or something like that. But according to the ETs, the Christ is a different being. They made a body of Jesus that resembled the Jesus that went to Japan, and then a being from Thaioouba or Jehovah, went inside of the body of Jesus made by them, so that Christ could perform miracles. Because people in the ancient times, as people nowadays they don't believe anything unless they see in their eyes. They're highly skeptical. They were highly skeptical back then. So this is why they had to have someone who could perform miracles in order to teach the basic principles of spirituality. And this is the reason why Jesus or Christ was suddenly able to perform miracles when after he began preaching. And this is probably why Christ, when he saw his mother, he called his mother woman and not mother. You know, I'm a linguist. I know that mother and son have a very special relationship. There's just not a single language in the world that someone could call his mother a woman. So this explains a lot of the things that I find to be very interesting in the Bible. Um, and so Christ was teaching spirituality, and then just to and also, you know, in the near the end, I think you must have read the book until the end, right? When he saw the body of Christ in the golden doco, he saw that the injuries from the crucifixion of Christ was actually not on the palm of the hand, but not on the palm,
Right
but
here.
on the wrist.
Right.
Yeah. So according to a lot of analysis, it had to be the wrist because the body weight is so heavy that if you nail a person on the palm wouldn't be able to support the body weight. It has to be on the wrists. And then he also saw the weeping injuries of the ribs as well. So this is a lot of the detail in the book just amazed me, that made me really rethink about a lot of the things that we have been taught.
Okay. Well, and in just to be clear, in Catholic tradition, it's well known that the injuries were actually in the wrists, just so you know that. And then also in the lost books of the Bible, in the what's called the infancy gospels, which are the texts that were written about the childhood of Christ, he did perform miracles even as a child, where he would actually make little clay molds of birds and then bring them to life. And there's other incidents and stuff that happen in the infancy gospels. And so we do see this capacity. It's obviously not at the level that happened when he was, 30, but we do see that it's there. And so anyway, I think that that's an interesting, just an interesting point to bring out, that, and I'm sure that, everything, one of the things in making any of these points is not in any way invalidating Mr. Desmarquette's experience, but one of the things we do at the Out of Body Travel Foundation is we bring everybody's experiences together to kind of get a bigger picture. And so another interesting revelation.
On that note, yeah, on that note, I want to also add that a lot of the secret societies also have the ancient knowledge to have this kind of out-of-body experiences and
Right.
to perform some of the miracles performed by Christ. This is what I found out later from another book that I translated from German to English. Yeah.
Oh, really? Which book was that?
It's called 334 Lies, Lies. It's actually supposedly to be autobiography of the former highest degree chair of a secret society that was founded in Germany. And then even though the book never mentions the word Illuminati, and then I kind of researched my way and found out that it is the Illuminati. And
Oh,
they talk about all the miracle that it can perform, like spiritual words and also manifesting objects from just using their intention or mind, and also just to influence other people's ways of thinking, and also a lot of the very interesting things that people would consider to be magic.
okay. And speaking of that, well, before we go on to that, let me just point out one other thing, because that's interesting you brought that up. But so, another UFO experiencer, Billy Meyer, who's well known, you might have heard of him, also has a similar story about the birth of Christ. And he authored, well, he translated, according to him, this book, the Talmud of Emmanuel, which is an ancient sacred text apparently found in Israel. And according to his experience, the Pleiadians implanted Mary with the embryo. And so just a pointer for my audience, which is, okay, so we have these two different stories. These are two different civilizations, may just be an interesting little detail. I'm curious, did the Thaioubans, but I do want to go back to that as well, where we're going to head there. But did the Thaioubans ever mention anything about these other extraterrestrial races?
Yes, they actually showed Michel de Marquet 147 corpses that were floating in the Golden Doco that were other ET races in our Milky Way galaxy. And actually, they invited another ET being to meet with Michel de Marquet, just explaining to him that there are other ET races that were also observing the people on Earth, and the other ET races were actually going through a similar experience or similar evolution compared to the people on Earth. Like on their planet, they also have wars, nuclear wars, and conflicts, and politicians, and religions, and things like that, very similar to Earth. But it's a natural process for all the people on different planets to evolve spiritually. On Billy Meier, I want to add that I learned about Billy Meier. I was extremely interested, so I specifically looked for information regarding how they built the Great Pyramid from the perspective of the ETs that Billy Meier encountered. It turned out that in his books, or people who were close to him, it was claimed that he said that the ETs told him that the Great Pyramid was built with 200,000 slaves using a 40-year period of time. This is very different from what the Jehovah's say about the Great Pyramid of Egypt.
Interesting.
The Jehovah's say that the Great Pyramid of Egypt was built actually by a great wise person from ancient civilization called Atlantis. In Atlantis, and the person's name is Thoth, Thoth.
Okay.
Yeah. And then he had the knowledge to align everything so perfectly. And then he used anti-gravitational technologies and supersonic vibratory systems to cut the huge stones in a very precise manner. And then the Great Pyramid was built in a 9-year period of time using this kind of technologies as an energy center. So the users of the Great Pyramid of Egypt could use this as a tool to communicate with people on other planets and also to make rain. And then it turns out that they can concentrate energy through the top of the pyramid and then project into the sky. And according to a research experiment done by the University of Reading in the UK, that what they call the organ energy was projected into the sky so that clouds would form and rain would fall. So this is kind of like very consistent with modern theories of what a pyramid is and the function of Great Pyramid. I think this is a more plausible, more reasonable explanation on how the pyramid was built and for what purposes than what Billy Meier received.
Okay, well, we can just throw both of those possibilities out there and kind of just let everyone kind of think about that. Yeah. And then, you do have the fact that the Great Pyramid, peers out to where it looks out towards the Pleiades, and then or was it Orion or both? So it looks at the constellations. It has different, so what is the direction of and forgive my pronunciation, is it the Thaioubans?
Yeah, Jovens, they didn't really point out the exact location of their planet, but their planet is kind of like a golden planet because when Michel de Marquet approached it in the spacecraft, he saw a golden mist surrounding the planet, and everything's so perfect, so beautiful, very
Okay,
similar to what Enoch described in his book, the Book
very
of Enoch.
interesting.
And
Yeah, and I remember he said in the book too that it was really far away. Am I remembering that correctly? That it was really, really far away. So it wasn't like something that necessarily we might even see in our night sky. Was that
right,
correct?
right.
And so,
Yeah, from Thaioouba, Michel de Marquet could see the sun, our sun, but couldn't
okay.
see Earth.
Okay. And so I think that's interesting to point out to people too, because because we do see, and you had mentioned the extraterrestrials talking about the various races. And one of the things I've talked about in my books is that there are mortal races of the extraterrestrials that are like us, who are on a mortal journey going through karmic purification and all the same things we do. And then there are those that are kind of operating in a higher level. And obviously the Thioubans are among those, the Pleiadians are among those, and some of these other species are among those, but there are many that are going through an evolutionary kind of sphere of experience and existence.
What interests me a lot is that it seems that from this book, explained that a lot of the other ETs were really just observing people on Earth, but Jehovah's were directly involved and sometimes intervene in our actions,
Okay.
as described in the book, based on the author's experience and personal knowledge, that according to this book, the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, Exodus, Moses leading the ancient Hebrews out of Egypt, and also the birth of Jesus and the resurrection of Christ, also including during World War II, when the U.S. Military or the government developed the atomic bomb earlier than Germany. That was actually action of or intervention by the ETs from Thaioouba, just to help us to grow our spirituality. But they really cannot intervene so much directly because we really have to help ourselves.
Okay. And so on that point, we're going to